Am I looking?
Thank you, and welcome to the Image Profile Report. I'm your host, Herb Glenn. We have known that there are a number of individuals who have found opportunities where they can be able to generate their skills in a direction that can be very helpful for others. The potential of that particular discovery comes most often when people put their thoughts to paper and publish them. Writers are unique because there's a special passion of patience that one would have to have in order to create a clear and positive project that will be successful. We're here now with Dr. Leslie Devereaux. Dr. Devereaux has put together a book called Breaking Codependency and how to navigate the traps that sabotage your life. There are a number of different methods in which individuals have been inspired to find a way to get away from obstacles and to navigate through many of the troubled channels of their lifestyles. And in many instances, it has been by experiencing certain situations that others have had. Dr. Devereaux, we thank you very much for giving us a chance to talk to you about your new project. Why don't you give me an understanding? When I first looked at the book, Breaking Codependencies, took me on a real spin. And I guess obviously you know what that was. What is a codependency?
That we want to define it, right?
Exactly.
And so basically, codependency or enabling is a huge element of codependency. And what it is when you are in a relationship with an individual and that relationship either brings that individual down or it brings you down. So you are involved with each other in a dysfunctional sort of way. I'll give you an example. An example that was largely used relates to people who are family members of people who are drug addicts or have some kind of an addiction. And so usually what happens in those situations, the family member has someone who's addicted to drugs, and instead of you issuing tough love for that person and possibly saying no to situations, you perpetuate that destructive or self-destructive conduct that person exhibits. So the person keeps coming to you. I'm going to keep it real. They're on drugs. Instead of you putting them in a rehab or telling them to leave, you give them money. You make excuses for them. Every time they fall, you pick them back up. You don't know how to say no. And part of the reason for that is because you're operating out of love.
And finding a legitimacy for their problem.
And finding a legitimacy for their problem. And so you confuse that your love, and you confuse love with the fact that there are some people that you have to say no to. And so as opposed to you holding back in situations, your love turns into destruction for that person. You hurt the person more as opposed to helping them when you don't say no.
We often don't know these things. There is no book on parenting. I don't care how many books they write, there is no book on parenting.
None.
Parenting is an experience. And in most cases, some people have a closed mind. They believe that they are the caretaker, they are the discipline, they are the controller of someone's life, opposed to helping them learn how to navigate into an independence.
That's right.
Is this what we're sharing in terms of the experiences that you write about in codependencies? And
so what happens is, there's that saying that you can either give a person fish or you can teach them how to fish. An enabler is always giving.
Okay.
They're not teaching.
I see.
And so it doesn't even have to necessarily stop with family members. I mean, there are situations where you might enable a friend making excuses for bad behavior and poor conduct, negative conduct. You might enable someone that you're in a relationship with.
Okay.
It happens, you know. And
condescending is more like the atmosphere of wanting to feel that you are comforting them, even though it's not being helpful.
That's right. And you engage in the conduct, this rescue conduct. I call it a messiah complex. You know, we feel like we are the ones that can do it all. We can control other people's lives. They don't have to control their own lives, even when it's spiraling out of control, because we're there to take over and do it for them. That's what an enabler does, as opposed to allowing somebody to stand on their own 2 feet and to support them. They infuse their own life into that person's life. And so what happens with codependency is that while you are putting yourself into another person's life and you're perpetuating this negative conduct, they're going further and further down, but you're also pulling yourself down. And before you know it, you're drained. You may end up in trouble because you crossed some lines, because you didn't know how to say no to the person, whoever that person might be. It could be your boss.
Right.
It doesn't have to be. Many years ago, when this whole phenomenon of codependency first came into existence, the thought was that you were just dealing with people who had family members who were addicted to drugs. But now there's a larger dynamic that has come into play, because you may have children that you've raised, and they're grown, and they decide that they want to stay home 27, 37, 47, not pay bills, not go to work. And what do? You get up every morning, you cook their breakfast, you wash their clothes, you're taking care. That's enabling.
Okay. When we think about what you have been able to develop in your book, which is very good here, and I have had an opportunity to look through some of the areas that you have addressed in terms of looking at different areas of codependency.
Yes.
Now, following through, you seem to put it together as if it were a novel that gives some lesson that an individual can be able to take and use in the approach of trying to overcome an obstacle or two.
Yes.
No place to call home, the workhouse, and different things that have happened in your lifestyle.
Yeah, and the book is a book definitely of my own personal story, but because I was an enabler, I tell everyone now that I'm delivered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was an enabler, and I didn't know how to say no, and it cost me severely. And so I had to think about, how do I take a situation that was traumatic for me and try to help other people through my story?
Right.
I didn't want it to just be a story about me. I wanted it to be a story that empowered and uplifted and inspired others. So I'm happy to report we've had the book launch was a couple of weeks ago here in Newark, and I've received several phone calls from people who have said to me that they saw themselves in the book.
Really?
That the book was very self-reflective.
Okay.
And that was the whole purpose. And
but you also find an area of being able to have some workshop principles.
yes. Yes.
How does that apply to the relationship of knowing where you can find support from the literature that you've written?
So what I decided to do in terms of when I put the book together was to not only tell a story. I wanted it to read. It's a nonfiction, but I really wanted it to read like a fiction. And so it starts off very exciting because it talks about me and my situation.
Yeah.
And then I move to, after each chapter, I have chapters that are called reflection exercises.
Okay.
So after each chapter, I give you a person who's reading the book the opportunity to read about what I experienced, and then I point out some questions that are related to that chapter. And I give the person an opportunity to just question themselves, question your behavior, question your motives, question your relationships, and in hopes that if you question yourself and you're honest with yourself, if you find that you have some of the characteristics of an enabler, that you will begin the process of making a change. Because there's no problem with loving your family, loving your friends. There's not a problem with supporting people. But it's when you support people to your detriment. When it becomes a detriment for you and for that person, that's when it becomes a problem. And so what I tried to share was that you can love, you can nurture. I have a I have a chapter called Women and the Willing Spirit. And I ask the question, why do women care so much? And we care so much because we're supposed to care. We're born to care. It's instinctive in us as mothers to care for people. But there's nothing wrong with caring. But when the caring becomes or comes to a point where it's self-destructive for you and the person you're caring for, that's when it becomes a problem. So I talk about that.
Well, obviously, the metabolism and the body chemistry between males and females really show the ability of women to be more superior when it comes to emotion.
Yes.
And then primarily because of the fact that without women there would be no generation.
That's right.
God's greatest gift to mankind,
Yes,
obviously.
thank you. I'm glad you said
The
that.
reality of it. But the
Yeah.
fact in the matter in regard to how we approach lifestyles and in regard to, let's look at the methods now that our generations are evolving into alternative lifestyles and the acceptance of it. Being a Baptist minister and knowing the conditions in regard to not being judgmental of what kind of attitude an individual may have, how does a codependency really work in the atmosphere of social conduct and delivering an individual to understanding the true nature of why they are part of life?
So I talk about, in the book, I talk about looking in the mirror. I talk about, a lot of it is very self-reflective work. And so you have codependence, you're dealing with two individuals in a codependent relationship, two people who are attached in a dysfunctional manner. And so both people have work to do. It's not just one person. The person who is the enabler has work to do. They have to. I have a section in there called the enabler test, and it just talks about some of the characteristics of an enabler. Somebody, like I said, who has this rescue conduct. Some people who suffer from low self-esteem or no self-esteem. Some people who have a need to control all situations. They think they can handle everything. So I say to you that you have to look in the mirror. You have to be honest with yourself. That's what I had to do. You have to really look at the issues that are weighing you down as opposed to lifting you up.
So it has really nothing to do in terms of gender.
Nothing to do with gender. The reason why women and enabling are there, I wanted that section in there because obviously I'm a woman, and because I have the opportunity to be around a lot of women, and I noticed this, that when it comes to enabling, that a large majority of the people that do it are women. And that's not a negative about women at all. And like I said, it is really, I try to explain it as sometimes the lines get blurred when it comes to our heartstrings. Because a lot of times we pull on our own heartstrings and we allow other people to pull on them. And when it comes to that, I'm a mother. I raised 5 boys. I have 3 sons.
And the reality behind that, you also have a vast area of professionalism. You worked within the court systems.
Yes.
How did that affect your approach in knowing that this type of literature, this answer to knowing how to break that barrier, is going to be effective when someone picks it up and reads it?
So, I worked in the courts for many years, and unfortunately, many of the people that came through were either enabled by a mother, a father, a grandmother, someone in their life who just kept, and the reason I knew that was because the repeat offenders, they would come, they would have issues, they would get locked up, they'd have to make bail, and the same person would be there doing it over and over and over again. As opposed to saying, okay, you keep doing the wrong thing. The person comes to their rescue time and time and time and time again. And so what I say, because I have a section of resolutions in the book, so it starts out with just talking about some of the symptoms of codependency and characteristics, and it shares my journey with it, and I do it in plain language. It's an easy to read, it's a quick read book, because I want everybody to be able to pick it up and relate. After you get through that point and you do the self-reflective exercises, I move to resolutions, and One is, for me, was having an awakening. And I say the awakening occurs, and it occurred for me when I, like I said, looked in the mirror. I dealt with some of the negative things in my character, in my personality that I didn't like. And then I journaled. I wrote things down. I read a lot of inspirational books. I read self-help books. I did all those things. I even had some counseling, which isn't for everybody, and I don't think that you have to necessarily have professional counseling. But I wanted to talk out some of my own issues, and so I did that. So I say that's the first step, that you have to have an awakening. Just like a alcoholic or a gambler or someone on drugs, you have to be willing to say, okay, I have a problem and I want to deal with it.
In a workshop setting, is it possible that this particular tool can be used to really create an effort of helping to change people in their lifestyles?
I believe so. I believe already, as I've said, that several people have called me and said that they're using it. Some women are using it on their retreats. Some people are using it in their Bible studies. And share with you before the show aired that I'm leaving tomorrow for Bermuda to do an international tour, a book signing, a women's conference, and we'll be doing a workshop. So it's an excellent book to bring people together and to do a workshop on the issue of enabling, and for people to really sit and get honest. And that's the word. You have to really get honest about who you are and what your situation is. Now, everybody doesn't have this situation. Everybody doesn't have a situation, and everyone is not an enabler because they're helping someone. But it's when it starts draining you, when you find it's hard for you to say no, when you keep picking up a person that the same person keeps falling, and you keep picking them up, that's when you know that it's time for you to really think about your behavior and their behavior and see whether your helping is really hurting them. Because sometimes we can love somebody to death, if you know what I mean. As opposed to strengthening them, we are really making them weaker, as opposed to allowing them to stand on their own 2 feet. I do a lot of my work is in self-development and personal development for women, mostly women. That's my niche, and I do workshops, I do retreats, I do conferences, and I talk about issues relating to failure and being able to lift your head up and rise above the noise of failure, how you pick yourself up after a fall. I talk about self-esteem issues and what that means for you in terms of trying to move forward to the next level of your life. If you have low self-esteem, sometimes you fall into people-pleasing because you don't feel good about yourself.
Do you find your ministry kind of woven into what's
Oh,
going on?
absolutely. I have a section in there that's called What the Scriptures Say About Codependency. And there are scriptures that talk about codependency, and just so many of them. But generally, the premise is that if you are in a relationship where you're caring so much for another person, and especially if you're caring for them to their detriment and yours, then you are looking at replacing God for that particular person. You are moving yourself away from depending and leaning, because remember, codependents lean on one another. But you know, and I know, as ministers, is that we're supposed to be leaning on the Lord.
Right.
And so when we take away, when we spend so much time leaning on other persons to our detriment, and we have no time to spend looking to the Lord to help us in a situation,
or developing independence in regard to your thinking and knowing that the relationship of having God within your thoughts is what really drives you to find a success. It's not saying, oh, wait till God gives me the success.
No, that's right. He drives you. But if you're moved away from that because you're so involved in the life of somebody else, becomes a problem. So I do talk about that, and it definitely, as a matter of fact, When I go to Bermuda, I will be speaking to one night I'll be at a church with women and we'll be talking about that same issue.
And the reason why, I kind of alluded to the gender question was because in most cases, women are attracted to wanting to make a change in their lifestyles and finding an interest in developing methods that can provide for them that discipline so that the change can be emulated properly. Proportionately, men, when it really comes to our priorities, the only thing that really comes to my mind is where I'm going to get some money, how I'm going to get the money, and when is that money coming?
Right.
Money is my,
Right.
priority.
Right.
I'm not worrying about whether you
Care
are,
about it. How you doing? What you doing?
What?
No, you're right. That's us.
Yeah.
We're all, we're worried about how you doing, what you're doing, if you're eating, if you have clothes.
Yeah.
It's us. It is.
Yeah.
So I think while there are families that participate in codependent activities, meaning men and women, I think for the most part it's a woman issue. And my book speaks to a lot of women.
Let me think about that. As a married man with issues, I got issues, and I think I don't know one married man that don't have an issue.
I don't know.
Could me and my wife pick this book up?
Yeah, I know, right? He'd laugh at that too.
The book writer.
Yeah, he'd laugh at that too.
But if we took this book up and really did something like the Bible in the sense of it, and like use it to correlate or use it as a study method, could this help us?
I think it could help you because I even say that in your relationship. And the reason why I think it helps with a husband and wife is because this is the scenario. This is an example. You're married. You have children. You're the man. Now, men usually deal in tough love. Okay, boy, you better get out of here and get a job.
Right.
The wife is dealing with, but he's my baby. Let him stay for another 6 months or another 6 years, right?
Right.
So then there's tension that might develop between you and your spouse because you're saying one thing and the spouse is saying another. You believe that the situation with your child should be handled one way and your spouse believes it should be handled another. There's tension there.
Right.
So what I put in the book is that it's a good book to read with your spouse, who either is the enabled or the enabler, so that you can get an understanding of what that behavior is. And so you as a husband who might look at the wife, your spouse, as somebody who's enabling the kids, or her sister, or her brother, or her mother, because like I said, it doesn't just have to be your children. It could be your family members, right, that you enable. Read it with the person so that you understand what they're doing, and then hopefully they understand what they're doing, and you can come to some kind of resolution and begin to do the work. Because the book obviously is about doing the work. I give resolutions, but it really starts with you. It starts with you on the inside. I can put it out there, but it's up to the person to take the steps necessary to begin the work to remove themselves from negative relationships.
There's an area here in your book, Diablo's Disrespect, and it reads, I have shared many stories of the women whom I met in prison who were both enabled and enablers. One of the most devastating I encountered was the story of 15-year-old Diablo, who was serving time for murder because she took the rap for her boyfriend who actually killed someone. She lacked any positive image of herself, was enabled by her family, and ultimately validated destructive behaviors of others. What was the outcome?
Perfect. She's stayed in prison. She ended up doing 15 years, and he, I think, did nothing.
Wow.
And that's an example. That's what I'm talking about. So she knew he was doing wrong. He was, I think, a drug dealer. And whatever happened, and someone ended up dead. And as opposed to her letting him take responsibility for his actions, she took responsibility for his action. Enablers a lot of times do that.
What did you do in that regard when it came down to your reflection exercise? How did it really build itself into the questions that you're asking?
Well, in terms of her situation, I kind of use those questions, and the questions come from the entire chapter, and so
Okay.
I'm sure I looked at in terms of self-image. What do you think about yourself?
Wow. Okay.
What do you think
That's
about?
clear. Yeah.
What do you think
Right.
about? And because she didn't think much of herself at all if she was willing to go to prison for 15 years for somebody who committed a crime.
In terms of the relationship that you're dealing with and talking about breaking codependencies, it certainly is an area that we can be able to challenge as being a positive method in which we can be able to develop positive relationships in our lifestyles. One of the things that's so important and incredible about this book is that Dr. Devereaux is from the local community and has a passion for wanting to be able to identify with some of the obstacles that we go through. It certainly is a good read. It's more than a textbook.
Yes.
It is something that you probably will find an enjoyment with. Dr. Devereaux, we're so happy about what you're doing. We want to continue to be supportive to what you have been able to offer to our community, and we want to, lift you up in praise because it's just so fabulous
I'm
that
excited.
it's not this love me, love you kind of a book, and nothing wrong with those love me kind of books,
But it's not a victim book either.
Exactly.
It's really a book, hopefully, that will uplift, empower, and inspire. That's my goal.
Well, we're very happy about it. We're certainly going to look forward to having another opportunity to work with you. And even though we may be running out of time, we certainly want to encourage everyone to find the opportunity to pick up Breaking Codependencies, How to Navigate the Traps That Sabotage Your Life.
Yes.
We're very happy about this. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Devereaux.
you so much.
Really
it was
appreciate
really a
you.
pleasure.
And we'll be looking forward to having more opportunities where we can share with you and positive things that are going on, especially with women in our community. Thank you for tuning in, and have a good evening.
Thank you.